Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Whiting, and this is my presentation for CSE 340 Week 3. My topic is the SQL syntax for the select, insert, update, and delete statements. Alright, just as an introduction, the insert, update, and delete statements are part of the data manipulation language, or DML, and what these statements are used for is to handle the actual data within our table and not the structure. Our first statement is the select statement. A select statement performs a query against a database to retrieve the data. Select is a mandatory keyword because without it you're not going to get anything since you haven't asked it to select anything. So in your select clause, you must start with the keyword select, and it also must include a from clause to state which table you are wanting that data from. Now, to select all of the information in a table, if you want to see all columns from a table, you select asterisk, and this will display all of the columns. But don't forget to add your from clause, again, to state which table you are wanting that information from. If you want specific columns, you have your select keyword, and then the name of each column separated by a comma, again, with your from clause to state which table you want that from, and then you will only see those three columns. Next is our insert statement. Your insert statement creates or inserts a new row or rows. The first line of your clause identifies the columns in the new row. Now, if you're working with a table that already exists, you need to match up the existing columns. The second line has your constants or your actual data. There must be the same number of columns specified in your first line as constants in your second. If you have 4 constants in your value, but only 3 columns identified, you're going to throw an error. Next is your update statement. Your update statement changes or updates the data contained within a table, but your structure remains the same. So we're just updating and changing the data. And this example is from the reading this week. This is updating the the salary column from a table called personnel. And this is giving the salary a bump. But the way it's written right now, this is going to increase the salary for everyone in the salary column. And that's not what the book wanted. So what you want to do is add a where clause. So this is saying only increase the salary for job grades that are less than or equal to 4. So be sure to include a where clause if you have specific needs for your update statement. Last is the delete statement. This removes or obviously deletes entire rows of data, but the structure remains the same. You're just going to delete the data in those rows and columns. In this particular example, you are deleting from a table called teams, only the rows where the ID equals 63. Now be sure to include your where clause. You can't forget your where clause or else all of your data will be erased. Let's see some examples. I am working in PHP My Admin just because that is what we're using for our assignments this week. I'm going to be working off of our PHP, did that delete? Again, I'm working in PHP My Admin. I'm going to be working off of the PHP Motors database that we created this week in our activities. Let's do a simple select statement. Let's select all. Let's go from our inventory. Okay, so this is the whole inventory table. Let's do a more specific select statement. Let's select only our inventory make, inventory model, and let's see if those are in stock. Sorry, I'm OCD about my SQL syntax. So only those 3 columns are shown since we specified those 3 columns. All right, let's insert into that. Let's do an insert statement. Let's insert into the car classification table since that has less columns to work with. All right, that particular table only has 2 columns, classification ID and classification name. Let's add some values to that. And we only need 2 because there's only 2 columns. Now, right now there are 5 rows, so let's add a 6th row, and let's call that a van. Now you can insert multiple rows at once. Just be sure you add a column in between. Our next one will be 7, and let's call that a race car. Why not? Perfect. Now that inserted 2 rows. Let's go ahead and just make sure that inserted. It did. So these are the two rows that we just created. Row 6, van. Row 7, race car. Let's do an update statement. I don't want that to be called race car anymore. I want that to be called spaceship. Now, just for the sake of time, I'm using these handy little buttons down here that PHP My Admin lets you do. I prefer to write these out myself, but for the sake of time, let's update car classification table. Let's set the classification name, oh, make sure you spell it correctly, to, we're calling it spaceship now. We're just doing 1, where classification ID equals 7. All right, I want to go ahead and see that. I want to see that change. Yep, it changed it to spaceship. All right, now since we made up those rows, let's go ahead and delete them. For sake of time, I'm using these buttons. Delete from car classification where classification ID equals 6. Let's see if it did that. And it's going to ask you because you can't go back after you've deleted something. So we have our where clause. Make sure that is the 6th row. Perfect. Yes, I do want to delete that. Let's see if it actually happened. Yep, we don't have our row 6 anymore. So that's my presentation. I hope you guys learned something about inserting, updating, and deleting data from our tables. Thanks, guys.